Say do it again, please.
Stay off the weed.
So other than marijuana, what else have you had?
That's it.
Just 3 cones?
Yeah.
Have you had that marijuana before?
No.
Drug-affected patients can be in this loop, so you've just got to keep reassuring them. You have to keep going back to saying that they're safe and they're okay.
Whatever marijuana you've smoked, it's not put you in a good place, okay? So you just need to know that you're safe and you're going to have an amazing shit tomorrow, and these 4 pizzas are going to be out of your life, and they're going to go through the right way and they're not going to come up the wrong way, okay?
Stay off the weed.
Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey chapter 420. It is the second day of the week, aka the special beam cannon workout. I am feeling very wonderful right now, very excited for this workout. But anyways, to the main subject matter for today, which, if you haven't already guessed it, weed. Now, this one has been on the back burner for quite some time, as I've wanted to talk about this for a lot of different reasons, and probably, in fact, won't be the only episode about it. But figured I'd wait until this episode would come in because obviously the 420 moniker, it seems as though that is the best time to do it, or at least start maybe a series, I don't even know, but just looking at it because there's a lot to talk about here, whether it be my personal experiences with it, outside experiences with it, or just generally speaking, how I feel about it personally. I think that weed is a very interesting subject matter because when I was young, it was illegal, and nowadays it's technically legal. In my state, the recreation is, as well as, I think it's just legal, period. But in DC, it's technically legal, but not really. It's a little interesting of a dynamic where, depending on where you go, no matter where you are, there's a little bit of a interesting thing. Obviously, there are people who like to smoke while driving, so occasionally you'll smell that every once in a while. But it's an interesting thing. Weed in and of itself is a very interesting drug. Like I said, I'm going to go down into every rabbit hole that I could think of in this allotted amount of time, but I don't think I'll get to everything I want to say. But I'll say this. Am I a fan of it in a certain sense? Like I would do it? Nah, I'm good. But with that being said, am I somebody who thinks that other people should do it? 50-50, actually. There are some people that can be functioning whilst high. That is something that happens. If they are the equivalent of functioning alcoholics, they do exist. It's just a very rare thing. I think there are more functioning stoners than there are functioning alcoholics, though. But that's kind of a different subject for a different day in a certain point. But I do think that number of the people, there's probably more of a number of people who think they are doing well while high, or are functioning while high, while doing stuff, while in reality they're probably not as much. So that's probably a bigger number than we could probably ever really imagine. Before we get into everything, I'll say this. It's a very touchy subject matter in a certain sense, because you can talk about weed as much as you can, but for some reason people get vehemently angry about if you discuss weed in a bad light, because for some reason the potheads, even though they're very mellow and chill, the moment that you actually mention something that might be criticizing to them, well, then things get a little bit cyclical, let's just say that. It's just an interesting thing, and I don't necessarily hate it. I don't think it's the worst of everything that could be possible. Meth is out there, and I'm pretty sure meth is much worse. But generally speaking, it's not necessarily good, per se. Also depends on a lot of stuff. So it is something that we will get into, and a lot of other stuff. I got a bunch of shit to talk about here, and my personal experiences with it, like I said, and a few other things like that. So we'll talk more about that and a few other things when we get to Mother Base. All right, so started this day off with squats, which were pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Weed. So the main reason why I wanted to discuss this is because it was episode 420 and it felt like it was probably the time to talk about it. There were a couple other things I could have done for 420, like talking about the Columbine shooting or Hitler's birthday, but I decided on weed being the one. Funny how that are a lot of associations with the number 420.
But anyway, besides that, it's a very interesting subject matter to get into. Personally, I've dabbled in it every once in a while. I've had a few edibles in my life. It's nothing too crazy. I have done it, but I don't like it. I have had a couple too many bad experiences, so I stopped. That's a personal thing. I got into a weird loop, and one time I forgot who I was, but that's kind of a different story for a different day because that goes into the loop. But I wanted to say that it has been a part of my life for a while, as I've had friends and such, even family, that are participants in the weed smoking. I've had, I would say, many of my friends have had dabbled in it as well. It's just a common thing to have experienced here, especially nowadays where it's legal. So it is something that is more readily available, not like it once was before, which is a very interesting experience to go from it being immediately illegal to, hey, you know, you can go buy some here at this one specific spot that you've driven by all the time. So it's a very interesting dynamic when it goes from illegal to legal, and not like in DC where you have to sell something else in order to pretend you're gifting weed, which is a really weird workaround, but a lot of places end up closing because they couldn't get around that workaround. But anyways, generally speaking, I don't think weed is good. I don't think it's a good thing per se. But then again, I don't think alcohol is good. Now, does that mean I'm going to damn it all to hell? No, I think the biggest issue with weed, and I think this will always remind me of something that I watched a long time ago. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it reminds me of the fact that when people smoke weed, they will end up going into what is known as like a weird loop of nothingness, where the guy described himself being like, oh, I'm too busy to go out with my friends or too busy to do something with people because I'm smoking. And that was the whole point. He didn't realize that he's basically isolating himself socially from others because he is considering doing weed as something to do, not realizing that this is just keeping him contained, basically. And I think that's a bigger issue than a lot of the people that smoke regularly would like to admit, particularly because it can cause that effect where you are quote unquote doing something, but in reality you aren't doing anything. You were just sitting there just getting high. And even though that's not necessarily the case for everybody, but that is one of those aspects of it where people can't get out of it, as well as the idea that people need it in order to enjoy things, which, let's be real here, if you need something to enjoy other things, that's probably an issue. The same thing applies to any other type of substance like alcohol. I mean, it's not that hard to accept that that means that you probably have an addiction to it, but a lot of people don't want to admit it because it's quote unquote not addictive. But that's the other issue with it now too, is that the modern weed now is completely different from what weed once was. It might have been a mellow thing back in the day, but now we have basically hyper weed, which is laced and concocted and potentized with as much shit as they can in order to get that THC level as high as humanly possible, and thus making it so that it's not the same and it's very brain altering. And we'll get to that some other day, as well as the idea that if you smoke too much, obviously it's going to lower your testosterone and do other side effects to you that you might not even realize. I don't know about infertility, but I feel like I've heard of that somewhere. Thing is, I'm not going to also damn it to hell in a certain sense, where if you want to do it on like a weekend and you're just chilling, that's fine. I'm not going to be like, oh, you shouldn't be doing it, you know what I mean? But there are certain points to where maybe, you know, you should think about where the consumption ends and when it starts becoming a dependent, just like most things. But that's where I won't condemn it, because if people want to just do it to chill or relax, or it actually lets them decompress, that's on them. Personally, it does not do that to me. I had one friend who was very good at doing stuff whilst high. It was actually sometimes you drive better while high, which is insane. But I had another friend who cannot do anything when high and is very annoying to be around when high. So that is something where it really is a luck of the draw, depending on who you know and what happens to them. Because sometimes it's just sometimes it is a fine thing if they're just smoking, and other times it sucks horribly, because then it just takes a whole the fun out of actually trying to hang out with the person. Then you have to hang out with the version of the person that you don't really like, and that's never really fun, because then that's not a conversation you really want to have with them. But it's definitely made some interesting conversations as well as outlooks on certain things, particularly because I wouldn't say it's necessarily the gateway drug like it once was believed to be, but it definitely is a drug nonetheless. And I think that a lot of people want to rely on it more than they want to admit. But I will say this, I think that as time progressed, I think more and more people are starting to get away from it in a weird way. They're just into vaping now, but I don't know too much about the weed game. I've been out of that game for quite some time now. I do believe that it is a part of a rabbit hole which can lead you to other things, not necessarily just like hardcore drugs, but other psychedelics, especially nowadays with how strong weed is. You'll end up wanting to explore other psychedelic avenues, which could end up frying your brain, which I've made a whole other episode about deep frying your brain, because this can also deep fry it, very much so.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. Got everything in, thankfully. But anyways, back to the main subject matter for today. Weed, or as Stephen A. Smith would say, the weed. So the main reason why I want to discuss this is because it has been something that has been on the list for a while. I honestly did not think I would ever get to episode 420 on here. I'll be honest. I thought I would have given up by now, but here we are. So in that sense, the main reason why I even wanted to do this is because of the fact that it is just literally that number, but also the fact that I have seen multiple sides of weed on multiple occasions, whether it be my own use or others' uses or other people's uses, or me seeing how it can lead people really truly astray. It's a interesting thing. Personally, I would not recommend it for most people. I think that some people could do it eventually, or if they know what it can do to them or how they can do it in a controlled way, then possibly. But also, it's not something that is, if you haven't done it, you're not missing much, it just depends really. But I think nowadays, the weed of now is such a different beast than the weed of, say, even the 90s or something like that, where we're getting like, not synthetic weed, because that's a whole other thing, but more so synthesized weed to be the most potent and strongest that it possibly can be, where you're one puff, one chocolate bar, one drink, one blank away from having a full-on psychosis issue, And I think that that's realistically what the problem comes down to with my fundamental issue with weed. It's not necessarily like it's bad or I would recommend it to anybody. You can do it. It's up to you really what you do with your body, of course. But it's one of those drugs that, because of how it's been manufactured and basically 10x, 20x, 50x from what it once was, it's no longer the whatever joke that it might have once been. I think that now you're getting strains that are so potent and powerful that they're on the levels of psychedelics to that point. And that's kind of a different story for a different day, but that's still a ridiculously high, potent thing to be doing on a consistent basis, of course, because obviously even something like psychedelics, that's like a one-time thing for like for a little bit, and then you have to let your body rest. It's not as simple as just kind of doing it every day type of deal. And I think that hitting that little bit of a mental break or shift so many times in a row is just not good for a lot of people. I think there are very few and far between people that could probably get away with it. But then again, it's more so people that are even making it less stronger, cutting it with nicotine and things like that. Because I think that at a certain point, we have gotten to the point where it is just too strong. I think that now we've gotten there. We gotta, I feel like you hear stories of people like going insane about smoking too much weed. I have a video at the beginning of the guy who wanted to go to the hospital for eating too many pizzas. Now, of course, it's a funny thing, but that's just more of a microcosm than anything else. I feel like there are probably more stories heard or not heard of that are just occurring just because of how strong stuff is. You know, it's not, I feel like it was once something that, you know, it was occasionally you'd get some mild shit, but now if you get mild shit, you're going to think you're getting scammed. You know, that's how strong the manufactured stuff is. So I personally, that's why it's something that might have been something that could have been something nice or at least relaxing or something along those lines, but now has turned into something a little bit more devious and sinister because of how it can cause a weird psychosis. When I mentioned earlier loops, hopefully I got into it in the voiceover. If not, I'll just end it off on this, is that loops end up happening a lot of the time whenever you get high, whether it be weed or anything like that. But I found that the mental loop that happens a lot is with weed, and for certain people, they can't get out of it. And sometimes that loop, that mental loop that they kind of go through, ends up playing out to the point where they can't get out of it even when they're sober. And I know that sounds kind of crazy, and I'll probably get into it a little bit more in a different episode, but I think that it's easier to get into whatever that loop is, whether it be unconscious, subconscious, or consciously, or even physically. You will get into a loop, and that loop can really, really destroy a life. And because sometimes people won't even realize they're stuck in the loop. But that's kind of a different episode for a different day. I'll talk about that. But I just wanted to introduce this because there will probably be another weed episode, probably weed part 2 or something like that, and probably some other stuff. So with that being said, though, tell me what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. This one's a random one, but still someone that I had on the back burner. Of course, if you paid attention to the numbers, you knew this was probably coming. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy. Stay safe out there and stay warm. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.